The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello and welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr. Each week we interview Olympic champions, world number ones and former world record holders to find out what they do to become the very best in their field. This week's guest is Mahe Drysdale. He is an Olympic rowing champion 2 times, in fact, 2012 and 2016. Yes, only a month or so ago in Rio de Janeiro. Rowing for New Zealand. Mahe is a great guy. You can hear that in this interview. We discuss things such as his greatest rivals. We talk about how close that 2016 final really was. We discuss his training, in particular what he did differently when he was diagnosed with osteoarthritis in his back. We talk about the other injuries he's sustained throughout his career. He's a really nice guy. I hope you enjoy this chat. It'll be with you in just a moment. Before we go to Mahe, I want to say about today's sponsor. It's brought to you by Sportacino. Sportacino is a brand new sports breakfast show. You can see it live every 8 a.m. British Standard Time on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Sportacino. That site again is facebook.com/Sportacino. Please like the page so you can watch and listen to the show every weekday morning from 8 a.m. BST. All different types of sports, health and nutrition chat. It's definitely one for you to look out for. That's Sportacino. That is today's sponsor of the show. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to learning from the very best and learning from Mahe Drysdale.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Mahe Drysdale, the Olympic rowing champion. Welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr. So great to have you on today's show. You were the Olympic champion once again in Rio, but what have you been up to in the last few weeks? Have you just been eating lots of food and just relaxing? What have you been up to?
Yeah, good day, Richard, and hello, listeners. Very much so. I've done very little, certainly in physical activity-wise, since the games, and just having a bit of downtime, spending a lot of time with the family, and it's been really nice actually. Been back home here in New Zealand, and it's one of those things that you do so much work, so it's nice to sit down and just relax and do nothing. Although the last 10 days I've had to start to do some more exercise just to try to keep the weight off a little bit. I am racing in Boston at the end of October, so I've got to be in a little bit of shape by the time that comes around.
Well, I know after you won gold in 2012, you started to do a few different things, such as coast to coast, and you did an Ironman, and I think you even competed in the New Zealand's PGA tournament and things like that. Have you got those things planned again?
Not as yet, actually. I'm still making decisions, I guess, on my future. So, once I've decided on that, then I'll try to look and put some events in. But I'm pretty sure either way, I'll take a little bit of time out to be able to do some of those things, as you said. And I really enjoyed that last time round, and it was a really nice sort of freshening up break and just giving you a completely different challenge, which is really great because obviously we're committed to rowing 11 months a year, so 6 days a week, and that means that you're completely focused. So to have a focus outside and do something different is a real change, I guess. And also for me, I'm very goal orientated, so I like to have something to do that gets me out and gets me training.
A lot of people talk about the goal setting aspect. We'll get into more of that a little bit later, but let's kind of go back to the start of how you got interested in rowing, how you got your start in rowing. Now, people like Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, they were swinging a golf club when they were 3 years old, but your introduction to the sport came quite a bit later, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I guess my first ever introduction to rowing was when I was 13, and I got sort of handpicked, I guess, at the school to go and join the rowing team because of my size. But I lasted one session and thought, man, this sport's not for me. So it wasn't again until I was 18 that I I actually had an opportunity to row again, and I guess it was a strange circumstance that it was actually drinking that got me rowing. And why I say that was there was what we call the university tournament here, and that meant that it was a lot of fun and a lot of social activity, and one of the only ways to go was to make a university representative team. I wasn't good enough at anything to do that, so I looked to rowing, which was a complete novice, and that's what got me there, and had a great time, and then I guess just got a little bit of the bug and slowly got sucked into it, and before I knew it, I was training 6 days a week, and suddenly I wasn't able to go drinking anymore because I was too focused on rowing. So it was a late start. I didn't get into the New Zealand team till I was 22, but I'm actually quite glad of that because I'm 37 and I feel like I'm still fresh and love what I do.
That's amazing how it went from drinking to becoming an Olympic gold medalist and the Olympic champion. So can you have a beer anytime now, or do you completely stay off it, or is it in your diet in any way?
It's not planned in my diet for sure. I think the odd beer doesn't hurt, but to be honest, in the big training blocks, I was probably only 4 or 5 times a year that I'd actually sit and drink a beer. I guess the thing to me is it is nice to sit and relax sometimes with friends and stuff, but if I came in after a hard day, I'd just as happily drink a juice as I would drink a beer. So it's something I don't particularly miss. But in saying that, I probably am quite happy that I had the life I did at university, and kind of got that out of my system, so I don't sort of feel like I'm missing out too much. And there's a few opportunities, obviously, that we do go out and have a few, and that's always enjoyable. I think it's important that you do have that little bit of balance in your life, that you do things that you enjoy, and but it's certainly not something that is part of my training.
So after you started rowing at university, eventually you made the Olympics in 2004. What was that experience like for you, your first ever Olympics?
Well, it was amazing, and I guess it was everything I dreamt it to be, apart from the result. We finished 5th, which was fairly credible, I guess, for the crew we had. We're very much an up-and-coming crew, but for me, for the work we put in, I sort of wanted more, and I guess that was a pretty good learning experience. I think the Olympics is just, it's a circus, but it's if you're on the inside of that being an athlete, it's absolutely phenomenal. And what I guess I learnt was, by the time you show up, you fairly well are either in a position to win or you're not. And no matter how well you race or whatever you do, you're not going to make up a massive amount once you get to the Olympics. It's all about that preparation. So, that really set me up because, what I took out of that whole experience was if I make it back to the Olympics in 4 years' time, I'm going to show up in a position to win. And, that was really where it all developed for me because, then I had to find a way that I thought I could, break down those 4 years and, set small goals every day that was going to get me to winning that Olympic gold medal. Unfortunately, I didn't quite do it in Beijing, but it took another 4-year cycle to London. But it was that was, I guess, the forming of me was that Athens Olympics. That really showed me what you had to do if you wanted to be successful.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was after those Athens Olympics that you decided to compete solo. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I went from the Coxless 4, which I raced in Athens, to the single, and part of that was, I wanted to find out about myself, and the single was nowhere to hide. It's all you, and you will soon know whether you think you've got a future. And that was, I guess the turning point for me, because it could have gone one of two ways. Had I failed in the single, maybe I would have given up the sport. But the way that it happened was, I went out into the single and was fairly well instantly successful with 2 silver medals at the World Cups that year, and then winning the world title, which was my first ever medals at international rowing, and obviously first World Championships, in the single, and won a gold medal. And I guess that was a really awesome year for us as a Kiwi team as well, because we sent 5 crews to the World Champs and 4 of them won gold medals. So that was a moment that has shaped us, and something that I was very, very privileged to be a part of.
Now, you mentioned winning the world title in 2005, but your build-up for those championships wasn't plain sailing, was it?
No, it wasn't. I got hit by a water skier in our training, and got a couple of fractured vertebrae on my back, as well as fairly severe bruised kidneys. So that was in April of that year, and the World Champs are in August. So it was I guess not ideal, but it was also I think it's important that anything like that gets thrown at you, you take the learnings out of it. And I guess what I got out of that was how important rowing was to me, and how much I wanted to succeed. And to be completely honest, it was so hard, the training that year, that I was actually quite pleased to have a break.
Wow.
Obviously not in those circumstances, but I was out of the boat for 10 days, and back to full training after 3 weeks, and still had a lot of pain in my back. But it was again one of those things that you just reassess, and I realised how much I wanted it, and how much I was prepared to do to get it.
And you keep overcoming obstacles. In 2008 you mentioned your disappointment, but there were some unfortunate circumstances, weren't there? Because you were pretty ill for a lot of those games, right? It's I guess not something I've wanted in my career, was to make everything as exciting or interesting. Would have been just nice to have a boring life and just win gold medals, but I think it's made me who I am. And you're completely right. At the Beijing Olympics, well, firstly at our trials, in March, before that games, I had to overcome the 2000 Olympic champion in Rob Waddell to even get to the games. And once I got there, I got a virus, and that really affected me during the week. I lost a lot of weight. I lost 5 kilos, and it was a tough week to get through. But it's one of those things, sport, where there is no excuse. You've just got to show up and do your best. And I guess it was a little bit bittersweet, because winning a gold medal in those circumstances would have been unbelievable. But and that was obviously my goal. But I came away with a bronze, and so I'd felt like I'd failed in the fact I hadn't won that gold. But on the other hand, I was very proud, with the effort that I'd performed with in those circumstances. It was tough, and I guess another learning for me that you have to prepare that you're ready for anything, and even if something like that gets thrown at you, and you've got to be good enough that you can overcome it and still win. And again, you'll probably talk about London shortly, but that was probably what set me up, because I didn't have a great run into London. And I think Beijing, as I say, I was very proud, but in those months following, I found it really, really hard, because I had to assess, I had to look back, I had to really be honest with myself. And when I looked myself in the mirror, I realized that there was things that I could have done better, and I wasn't as good as I could be. And had I been, it was a 1 second, and maybe I still would have won. And that was the hardest thing, I think. Learning that I possibly could have won the gold medal had I approached things a wee bit differently. And that was really, really hard to I guess take. But again, it certainly set me up for my career ahead. There would have been one really positive moment from that time in Beijing, because I believe you were the flag bearer at those games. Just explain the feeling you had and the honour you had of holding your country's flag at that opening ceremony.
Yeah, that was an experience that I certainly, had a lot of pride in, and to be honest, it probably helped me later on in the week. But to be selected to lead your country and your achievements, I guess, are to a point where they believe that you're a worthy recipient of that. That was incredibly special and something that I will remember for the rest of my life. Leading out your country, carrying the flag, and into a stadium of 80-odd thousand people is pretty special. And as I say, I think just that, thinking about that, and how much that gave me, how much strength that gave me, that I had to lead from the front and there was no excuses. It certainly probably helped me perform better that week, even given the circumstances. And I lost 5 kilos of weight, which is a huge amount. It's 5% of my body weight, and that ultimately was what cost me was the dehydration. And again, there was things I didn't do the morning of, having an intravenous drip the morning of a race, which could have made the difference. But those are all learnings, and certainly something, I guess, with Rio, just that's been, and the likelihood of sickness there, it was it was great to have had that experience. We were certainly ready in our team that had anything gone wrong, we had the protocols in place to deal with those things.
You've mentioned something there, so I'm going to quickly come back on that. What in particular were you fearful of in Rio, and what kind of precautions did you take?
So obviously, there's a lot of media reports, I guess, going into Rio, which, the water was dirty. There was a lot of risk of illness. There's obviously, talk of the Zika virus and dengue fever and all those sort of things. So, we were very, very prepared going in, that we were prepared to deal with everything. Little precautions like all our drink bottles were in Ziploc plastic bags. We would drink and, not to make sure that we didn't get any of the water on those bags. Very careful with our, sanitizer and hand hygiene. After the rows, we'd be rinsing our mouth with Listerine mouthwash to kill any bugs, and showering and, making sure all our gear was washed and all that sort of thing. So, we took a lot of precaution, and that was just to make sure that we didn't get any diseases or viruses picked up from the water, because the water isn't particularly clean. And I'm very happy to say that our processes worked well, because none of the team got ill. And even I don't think, to be honest, around the regatta, that too many people were sick, which was a real positive. And I think overall, Rio did a really, really good job in making sure everything worked pretty well.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
We'll have more from Mahe in just a moment, but I want to tell you that today's show is also brought to you today by Audible. Audible is one of the leading suppliers of audiobooks in the world. They've got over 180,000 titles to choose from, and that's whether you've got an iPhone, Android, Kindle, or an MP3 player. You can listen to audiobooks thanks to Audible. It's a product I personally use. I highly recommend you download it. I listen to audiobooks nearly every day on the train, on the way to the gym, in the gym, in fact. All different ways you can listen to audiobooks. It's really good. And the people at Audible, because you're a listener of The Best in the World with Richard Parr, they are offering you a free 30-day trial with one free download to test out their product. All you need to do is go to audibletrial.com/best. That's audibletrial.com/best. best. I'd love you to try them out because as they're the sponsor of the show, by you helping yourself by trialing this product, you're also helping me and the best in the world with Richard Parr. So I'd appreciate it if you did that. All right, let's get back to the chat with Mahe Drysdale because he is the best in the world.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
I want to talk about the time between 2008 2012, and of course you had the crash just before 2004, but you continue to have back troubles and then were diagnosed with osteoarthritis. Now, for those who don't know, could you perhaps explain what that is? And then I also read that once you were diagnosed with that, you started to change your training. So maybe you could just explain what exactly you did differently.
Yeah, so I'll start back. So obviously, as I said, after 2008, I learned a lot of lessons from that. And, going into that next 4 years was about being so good in London that no matter what happened, I could overcome it and still win. So I went in, I was quite excited going into 2009 because, I knew that I could be better. And I guess, probably the key thing that came out of that review is I was aiming at being the best in the world. And what I changed the focus to was being the best I could be. And, that might sound like a small distinction, but that was huge because I realized there was things that I wasn't doing because I was winning that I could do better. And that paid dividends straight away with 2009, setting the world best time by another 2 seconds, which I'd already held in 2006 and going that year unbeaten. So I was really excited, I guess, thinking things were really well on track. And then at our trials in 2010, I hurt my back. And that was an ongoing year-long problem. Every time it got better, I'd start training, it would blow up again, and we just didn't know what was wrong. And finally, I had another scan sort of a year after I hurt my back. This was early 2011, and osteoarthritis was diagnosed. Now, osteoarthritis is effectively, if you think of inflammation, what had happened is I'd had a disc injury, which meant that my vertebrae were slightly closer together. And in the rowing action, as I went into extension at the back of a stroke, the vertebrae were rubbing on each other. And when bones rub on bones, they're obviously not supposed to do that. They create an inflammatory response, and that's effectively what osteoarthritis is. It's two bones that start an inflammatory response. They get bigger, they get niggly, they get sore, and that was effectively the diagnosis. Now, you might think that that's not a great thing to have, but I was actually really excited when I knew what it was, because once I know what something is, you can deal with it. And that's where my training changed a lot. Because what I found is I couldn't do more than one row a day because I needed to give my back that time to recover between sessions. And if I kept pushing it, I just had to keep sitting out of the boat and waiting for it to calm down, because there's very little you can do to an inflamed joint like that apart from sit and wait for it to calm down. So what I did is I replaced my afternoon session from doing 2 rows a day to doing 1 row a day and 1 cycle a day. And that was, it was, I guess, a big risk at the time because I didn't know that worked. I knew that 2 rows a day worked very well. But 2011, I got some, pretty good response. In the fact I won the world title again, I sort of felt like I was back to where I needed to be. And that put me on a good trajectory for London. And going into London, again, I was feeling really confident. 6 weeks out, I beat Ondrej Synek, who was my biggest competitor over that whole period. Probably throughout my whole career, he's been the man to beat, and I beat him by 5 seconds. And so things were looking really good going into London. But the biking, I guess, led to other issues, and I'd had a crash the day before the World Champs in 2011, just hurting my groin, and I got hit by a car in Germany 6 weeks out from the London Olympics. And at the time, I didn't think I was too bad. I got up, I was all good. Got back to the hotel. I couldn't even get my cycling top off. I couldn't move my right arm, and went to the hospital, and I had an AC joint injury, which was incredibly painful, and that kept me out of the boat for the next 3 weeks. So 6 weeks out from the Olympics, you don't row for 3 weeks. It's certainly not the ideal build-up, but again, I had to have a cortisone injection in that case, just to take away enough pain that I could actually row. And again, I guess I was confident in the fact that I knew I'd done everything I could, and hopefully I was going to be able to overcome it, and that's exactly what I did, which was incredibly satisfying.
Did doctors ever tell you not to compete when you were diagnosed with osteoarthritis, or when you had that crash? Did they tell you that you couldn't make the Olympic Games? Did you always go by their orders?
No, you have to sort of go by. I saw a specialist, with my osteoarthritis, and he was really good. He said, look, you can try, and if you can't do it, you can't do it. That's basically it. But you might need to. He was the one, but basically suggested you might need to change the way you do things, and if you change the way you do things, you might be able to find a way that you can manage it. And that's effectively what it's about now. Is it's about managing my back and finding solutions to that. So I don't think anyone's ever said, look, your career's ended. But even with the AC joint injury, I remember being in the hospital. They said, the injury you've got, it's an 8-week healing process. So I kind of said, look, I've got 6 weeks till the Olympics. And by the time I walked out of there, the doctor had agreed that it was going to be 10 days. And, I think you've always got to, push those boundaries. And it's amazing. I guess what I've learned is if you have a positive attitude, injuries seem to heal themselves a lot faster than if you do get down, and it's certainly not easy. I know that year when I had those back problems, I was on the verge, if not depressed at some of those moments, because it's incredibly hard when you can't do what you want to do, to compete and get out there and train, and that you're unable to do that. So, it hasn't always been easy, but it's again, you've got to try to be as positive as you can, and you just don't take no for an answer. You always try everything before you give up, and if you've tried everything and you've exhausted your options, well, maybe that is a time to stop, but thankfully, I haven't got to that point yet.
And it paid off in 2012, didn't it, when you won the gold medal? Just describe that experience and that moment and that day for us, please.
Yeah, well, the day wasn't great. I woke up and I'm not someone that suffers from nerves a lot, but I was incredibly nervous. This meant so much to me because I knew what a gold medal would do for my career. Effectively, in my mind, my career would be a failure without an Olympic gold medal. That's the pinnacle of our sport. So, I knew how important that was. It's a real precious situation. You've got a 7-minute race, effectively to define your career. And so I was struggling to eat. I threw up. And I didn't actually have a great warm up, to be honest, because I was just so nervous and just trying to get to the start line. But as soon as that buzzer went, that was the best moment of my day. That's the part that you can control. That's the part you've been building up for years and years and years. And that's the moment that you've got to go and take the bull by the horns, as they say. And that's your moment. And so, I enjoyed that race. It was a tough one. Ondrej, he wasn't going to let me have it easily. And, we battled it out, and sort of that second 1,000 started to push away from the field. And there was a moment there that I took a risk, and that was probably about 1,500. And, I knew that I didn't have a big enough margin to be comfortable, and that I had to take more. But if I was going to take more there, I was going to burn myself to pieces and wouldn't have enough to finish the race. But it was I guess a calculated risk, and that's where I sort of made my move and got away to about a length's lead. And going into the last 250, I thought, I think I've got enough. And then I saw Ondrej sort of bringing up a bit of a sprint, and I was like, oh no, I'm done. And but I just held on for dear life. And after about 8 strokes, I saw him, his shoulders sort of just droop, and that was the moment that I knew I'd won that race. But I still had 20 strokes to the line, and I think I thought of 20 different ways I could have made mistakes and screwed it up. So it was certainly exciting, and probably the feeling I had when I first crossed that line was just relief. Relief it was over, relief that I'd done it, and that was probably, it was only a couple of seconds, but then the sort of elation and the happiness kicked in, and people say it takes a long time for sink in. Well, not at all in that case. It sunk in immediately, and I knew exactly what I'd done and how great that feeling was. And it was a pretty special day, and probably the next 10 months was something that I'll remember very, very fondly, because I traveled the world. I was invited to all sorts of different places, including a very memorable trip down to Sri Lanka, and just really, I guess, enjoyed the fruits of all the hard work. And as you said before, did some interesting challenges like the Coast to Coast Ironman, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, played in the New Zealand PGA Championship. All these things that I absolutely loved doing, and was completely different to rowing, and a completely different challenge.
And you spent a few years living in London. Did that make a difference of when you won the gold in London as well?
Oh, for sure. I actually spent my first 7 years, or between when I was 4 and 11, living in the UK. And then I'd spent in 2005, 6 and 7, spent a few months over in the UK training. So it was like a second home, and I think it was pretty special for me to be there. Had a lot of friends, had a lot of family there, and that did make it extra special, because it was probably as close as I'll ever get to winning a medal at a home Olympics. I don't think we'll ever get one down here, and that was certainly a very special moment.
And you mentioned Ondrej. How important was it that you had someone to push you so much in your career?
Oh, he is fantastic, and it's a little bit bittersweet, I guess. In the fact that had he not been there, I would have had more world titles, and I would have had a lot more easy wins throughout my career. But that's part of the thing that makes it satisfying, that rivalry, and how far we've pushed each other. In the links, and interestingly, generally, when it comes down to a race between me and Ondrej, it's clear water to the rest of the field, and I think that's just how much we push each other. So I feel incredibly fortunate to have such a great rival. I guess it doesn't do wonders for your career stats, but that's what makes it also more satisfying, because I think if you're winning easily all the time, and you sort of went out every day knowing that you were going to win, it would take some of the fun and some of the challenge out of what we do.
So 4 years later, you retained the title at Rio about 2 months ago. Did you have any pressure going in because you were the defending champion? Did you feel any pressure?
Interestingly, not. And it was probably strange, because in London, that was probably the time that I thought most about Beijing. And that whole week I'd thought, why didn't I win in Beijing? I could have just taken the pressure off. And so it was interesting getting to Rio, and that's exactly how I felt. I just felt I was having fun. I was enjoying it, just lapping up the atmosphere. It was like I was at another Olympic Games. I felt like it was a bit of a bonus, to be honest. I'd already achieved what I wanted to in my career, and this could be, I guess, the icing on the cake. And so yeah, I really enjoyed the week. I didn't have any nerves. I was feeling good. And that was a really nice feeling, because I hadn't enjoyed London that much until I'd won. But Rio, I enjoyed the whole journey. I actually started to like training, which is not like me at all. It was always a chore, I guess, earlier in my career. I think just feeling how lucky I was to be doing something I love. And that's not to say the morning of the final, I didn't feel as bad as London for sure. But there were certainly nerves there, and you certainly know what's what's at stake. I guess is this is the big race, and this is what you've been preparing for. I hadn't won any world titles in that period. I've been pipped by Ondrej, by 0.7 of a second in 2:14, 0.3 of a second in 2:15. So there was a little bit of pressure that I felt like I needed that race to make those 4 years really worthwhile. But it was a really enjoyable experience, and that race was awesome. Having Demir Martin sort of join the party, I guess, with me and Ondrej, going toe to toe in a big occasion like that is that's what you live for, that's what you train for, and it was awesome. Obviously, would have liked it to be a little bit more comfortable. It was 5/100ths of a second at the end. That's about 1.5 centimeters. And it was a very, very nerve-wracking wait as we waited for the photo finish, which took probably 2 minutes until they came out with a result.
In fact, that's one of the questions we've got on Twitter. Brenton Speed was asking, was winning gold in a photo fair on Demir Martin, given at the other end of the course you can have a few centimetres difference? Is there anything they can do to change those rules, or do you just think it was fair and you were the winner?
I certainly feel for Demir, because I guess I've thought about it from my perspective. Look, it's hard, and to be honest, I don't know enough to be able to comment properly. If the margin of error, in a rowing course over 2K is less than 1.5 centimeters, then yes, I think it's fair that they separate it. But they've got to look at the margin of error, and is the start line completely level with the finish line? Is all the boats completely lined up? If they are, well, yeah, okay, maybe it's fair to separate it. Obviously, in the photo, you can clearly see that there is a difference. But I guess we're talking margins of error, and where is that? And that's the hard thing. I know in swimming, they say that there's a margin of error of possibly up to 3 centimeters in the pool length, because that's what happens with concrete. You can't get it completely right, so they decide that they'll only go to 100th of a second to separate people. And we saw that in, was it the 100 or 200 meter butterfly, where you got 3 silver medalists because of it. So I think it's something rowing certainly have to look at. What's our margin of error, and therefore how far can we separate it? I've never seen it. Well, there hasn't been an Olympic race ever separated by a thousandth of a second. The previous was a 1/100th. So it's certainly very, very tough on Demir, and I certainly feel for him. But I don't really know enough to say whether the course is accurate enough to separate that or not.
So was Rio your last Olympics? Will we see you in 2020? I read something on the internet yesterday that there's talk about you potentially switching to a men's 8 with Hamish Bond and Eric Murray. Are they just lies? Are they just rumours, or is there any truth to any of that?
At the moment, I'm going through the process, I guess, of trying to make decisions, and the biggest thing for me is can my body take another 4 years? I'm 37 now, so is getting towards the end of my career. There's certainly the 8 stuff is rumor, but I'd be lying to say that it wasn't an exciting prospect, because the Eights is a very, very special boat and has a very special history in New Zealand, because it was I guess what got rowing on the map, winning in 72. So it's certainly something that I'd consider. We haven't been in a position where we've had 8 guys good enough that we could say, yes, we can legitimately now put together a crew that could win an 8, and Tokyo would be the first time I think we've ever been in that position. So that is exciting. It's certainly something we'll consider. For me personally, as we've talked about my back issues, trying to manage all those, trying to manage my body through another 4 years, it's probably unrealistic that I could be a part of that, just because the sacrifices in training are probably too great to make that 8 go well. So but it's certainly something that I will look at, and we'll make decisions. But I think the biggest decision is whether I go forward or not, and that's obviously the first one I've got to make.
Well, Mahe, I know I've already taken up so much of your time already, and we've gone over our allotted 30 minutes, but I really appreciate your time today. We've learned so much from you. Just before we go, perhaps you could tell our listeners how they can continue to follow what you're up to on social media and your website, and how they can keep learning more about you.
Yeah, well, I've got a website, www.mahedrysdale.com. You can also find me on Twitter and Facebook if you just search for Mahe Drysdale, and I'm on Instagram, which is mahe.drysdale. So I'd love to have some followers, and if you've got any more questions anyone wants to know, you're welcome to ask me through one of those mediums. Thank you.
I'm sure they will. Mahe Drysdale, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being the best in the world.
It's a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Thanks again to Mahe Drysdale for being on this week's Best in the World with Richard Parr. If you enjoyed that, if you're a rowing fan and you want to know more great information from Olympic champions, we've got Heather Stanning on a future Best in the World with Richard Parr. I've already done the interview. I just need to edit it and put it together for your listening pleasure. It will be coming on the Best in the World, on iTunes, on Stitcher very, very soon. I'll keep you updated on my Twitter at Richard_Parr. That's a really great interview as well. It's not only if you like rowing, but if you like learning from the very best, that's what we do with Heather Stanning on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. It was great to have her on the show. It's a great one you're going to enjoy listening to. And don't forget, we've got all kinds of superstar athletes on the show before. All of the episodes are on iTunes. They're on Stitcher. They're on the Facebook page, Best in the World with Richard Parr, and they're also on my own personal website, richardparr.net. Go back and listen to the archives. You can really learn from some of the greatest sports stars on the planet. And if you like the show, or you've got any feedback for it, send me a message on Twitter at Richard_Parr, but also go on iTunes and give me a rating and review. The rating and review section on iTunes is very, very important to help boost the profile of this show, so I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. Thanks again to our sponsors today. They were Audible and Sportacino. Sportacino is on facebook.com/Sportacino, live every weekday morning from 8 a.m. All right, that's enough for me. We'll be back again next week learning from a former Olympic champion, world number 1, or world record holder, because they are the very best at what they do. They are the best in the world.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.